My name is Rachel Whitmore, and the day everything changed was August 24th, 2005. This story isn't easy for me to share, but I've come to realize that there's someone out there who needs to hear it. I used to be terrified of being labeled crazy, and honestly, part of me still is. But what happened to me, what I saw, what I lived through was real. I'm not sharing this for attention or sympathy. I'm sharing it because the message I received was too important to keep to myself. I've tried speaking about this before once. That time ended with me locked away in a psychiatric ward, dismissed by doctors who didn't even take 5 minutes to really listen. All I said was that I died, that I met Jesus, and that he showed me the future. It wasn't some dream or hallucination. I know what I experienced, and I've held it in for as long as I could. I'm not evil, I'm not possessed, and I'm not crazy. I'm someone who lived through something impossible, and I believe that what I saw was a gift from God, something that needs to be shared, no matter the cost. Before everything happened, my life looked normal from the outside. I was married to a man named Ryan Whitmore, who worked as a crane operator at a construction site in Galveston, Texas. We got married young and thought we had it all figured out. In 1995, we welcomed our twins, Carter and Lena, a boy and a girl, just minutes apart. When Ryan lost his job in 1997 after showing up to work drunk and causing a serious accident, I stepped up and became the main provider for our family. At first, everything seemed like it might settle down. Ryan promised to stop drinking, and for a while, he did. He stayed home with the kids while I worked long hours at an insurance firm downtown. I wanted so badly to believe that things would turn around, that our marriage would find its footing again. For a few months, we even had a little peace. But looking back now, I realized that peace was just the calm before a storm I never could have imagined. By the beginning of 1998, the drinking crept back in. At first it was small things, a few beers left in the trash, the faint smell of liquor on his breath. Then it got worse. He became angry, unpredictable, and eventually violent. I remember the first time he hit me. I had asked what was for dinner after a 12-hour shift. Without a word, he slapped me so hard I saw stars. He cried afterward, told me he thought I was disrespecting him because I was the one working. I stayed. I told myself it was stress, that it would pass, but it never did. The abuse became a routine, like the sun going down. Some nights it was a shove, other nights it was a black eye. I showed up to work with layers of foundation on my face, smiling through gritted teeth. People asked questions, but I lied. I was too ashamed to admit what was happening. And I loved him, I really did. I thought if I just loved him enough, he'd remember who he used to be. But instead, he drank more. He hurt more. And I kept shrinking inside myself, one piece at a time. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday afternoon, August 16th, 2005, to be exact. I had wrapped up a big project at work earlier than expected, and for once, I thought it'd be nice to come home early and surprise Ryan and the kids. I still remember walking in the front door, setting my purse down on the table and noticing right away that the house was too quiet. Normally, around that time, Carter and Lena would be playing, laughing, asking for snacks, but the silence that day felt heavy. Like something was off, and deep down, I already knew. I walked down the hallway and heard a sound I'll never forget. It was soft, almost like a whimper coming from Lena's room. When I opened the door, what I saw stopped my heart. Ryan was in there. And he wasn't just tucking her in or watching TV. He was doing something evil, something no parent should ever witness. I won't say what I saw in detail, but if you're a mother or father, you can imagine. I froze for a second, then turned and ran straight to the bedroom. We kept a pistol locked in a safe under the bed. I grabbed it, came back, and aimed it at him. My hands were shaking so bad. I screamed at him to get away from her. He did, slowly, like he wasn't even afraid. I should have pulled the trigger. Every part of me wishes I had. But I didn't. I let the moment pass, and by the time I called the police, he was sitting on the porch like nothing had happened. He was arrested that night. The trial moved fast. The things the court found out, he'd been hurting both of our children for years. And I had no idea. I hated myself for not seeing it, for trusting him, for working so much. The divorce was finalized in under a year, and with Ryan behind bars, I thought the nightmare was finally over. But the worst was still ahead of me. The night we died wasn't stormy or dramatic, it was just quiet. August 24th, 2005. I remember it so clearly, the way you remember the last words of someone you love. The kids and I had just come back from a therapy session. They were tired, worn out from the emotional weight of everything they'd been through. I remember Lena resting her head on my shoulder in the car and Carter asking if we could get ice cream next time. I told him we would. That next time, we'd stop for anything he wanted. I didn't know there wouldn't be a next time. When we walked in the door, I barely had time to close it behind us before I saw the flash. Then came the heat. The sound of a gun. I didn't even see him at first, just felt the pain bloom in my chest like fire. I dropped to my knees. My vision blurred. Then more shots, 5 in total. Somehow, they missed every major organ. But I couldn't move. I could only lie there and watch as Ryan stepped forward. The look in his eyes, it was hollow. I watched him raise the gun again, and I screamed, but my voice didn't make a sound. He shot Lena, then Carter. Each shot rang out like a bell that would never stop ringing in my ears. And then he looked at me one last time and said something I'll never forget. Now we can all be together. He turned the gun on himself. I heard the final shot, and then silence. For a moment, I thought I was gone too. But I wasn't, not yet. I felt my body give up, but my spirit, it started to rise. I looked down and saw myself on the floor, bleeding out, and I saw my babies lying nearby. But what hit me hardest was that I didn't feel what I thought I would. There was no panic, no sadness, just nothing. I didn't understand it then, but I would soon. There was this strange pulling sensation, like something had grabbed onto me right at my stomach, almost like a cord tugging me from the inside out. It wasn't painful, just persistent. It reminded me of how a kitten plays with a loose string, gentle at first, then firmer. Before I knew it, I was being pulled through something I can only describe as a tunnel. But this wasn't just darkness, it was deeper than black, like light had never touched it. And as I moved through it, I began to see things. Horrible things. I saw flashes of human cruelty, images of war, of pain, of suffering. I saw people screaming, buildings collapsing, bombs falling. I saw September 11th, and I saw a man screaming in a foreign language as he hit another with a rock. I saw Hitler shouting into a sea of raised arms. It felt like I was being dragged through every nightmare this world has ever seen. But far ahead, there was a light. At first, it was just a flicker, but it grew bigger, brighter, more inviting. It was warm in a way that made the cold of everything else fall away. When I finally reached it, I passed through with a kind of soft pop, like stepping from underwater into fresh air. And then I felt it. The kind of love that doesn't even exist here on Earth. It wrapped around me, through me, like I was home for the first time. I didn't see angels singing or gates of pearl. What I saw was a man. He was standing there, dark-skinned, wearing a simple robe and sandals, and somehow, without needing a name tag or introduction, I knew it was Jesus. The moment I saw him, I wanted to fall to my knees. But I didn't have knees, not in the way we think of them. I didn't have a body at all, but I still felt everything. I felt small, like a child again, standing in front of someone who had known me from the very beginning. The love that came from him wasn't just surrounding me, it was flowing through me. I'd never experienced anything like it before, and I don't think I ever will again until I go back. I started to turn away. I didn't feel like I deserved to be near him. I wasn't pure. I had made mistakes. I'd failed my kids. But he stopped me without even speaking. I heard his voice directly in my mind, gentle and full of peace. "My daughter, where are you going?" I told him I wasn't worthy to be in his presence, that I had let my children down, that I didn't deserve comfort. And his reply, it broke me. "Everyone who believes in me is worthy of my presence." Then he came closer, standing right beside me, and said, "Walk with me." As we walked, I didn't feel pain anymore. I didn't feel fear or confusion, just understanding. It was like everything inside me that had been twisted with grief and guilt was slowly being untangled. I asked him, "Why did this happen? Why did you give me my children only to take them away?" And he told me something I never expected. They chose this. Their souls made this decision before they were born. They were ready to come home. I didn't understand it. I still don't fully. But he said every soul makes a contract with God before it comes to Earth. I remember yelling, screaming even, "So what about evil? Does that mean you allow it? My children died because of evil." And he looked at me with the saddest eyes. He told me that all souls are born pure, that evil is the result of choices made by those given free will. And even those souls, when they pass, must face what they've done. They're cleansed. They feel every ounce of the pain they've caused before they can return to God. And yes, even someone like Ryan. That part was the hardest to accept. I stood there stunned. My whole life, I had believed that people who do what Ryan did, monsters like him, would burn in hell forever. I wanted that. I wanted to believe he would suffer for what he did to our children. But Jesus didn't speak with anger or judgment. He spoke with sorrow. He said, "The lake of fire is not a place. It's a process. It's what a soul goes through when it's stripped of all its lies and left to face the truth. It feels like an unending fire because the pain of that truth is unbearable without me." I didn't want to hear it, but I did. And somehow I knew it was true. I asked him, why me? Why did I have to live through all this? Was I being punished? He stopped walking, looked right at me, and said, "You are not being punished. What you've lived through is not the end of your story. There is more you need to see, more you must share." I told him I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to return to a world where my babies no longer existed. I told him I had nothing left. But he reached out, gently touched what would have been my forehead, and said, "You must return. And before you do, I will show you what lies ahead." The moment his fingers touched me, it was like time folded in on itself. In an instant, I saw the future, decades of it, unfolding like scenes from a movie I couldn't pause. I saw Earth changing. I saw people, governments, nations rising and falling. I saw fear, but I also saw hope. Jesus showed me 70 years into the future, not just of the world, but of my life. He said he was giving me this glimpse not to scare me, but to prepare me, to prepare all of us. The first thing I saw was a collapse. In the year 2024, the entire global banking system started to fall apart. Paper money, as we knew it, was gone. Everything shifted to digital currencies, crypto, government-controlled. I saw people cheering at first, thinking it was the future. But quickly, they learned how tightly it could be controlled. Access could be turned off with the push of a button. The rich got richer. The poor were trapped. And something new started to take its place, something that looked a lot like control. I saw the rise of what looked like a global grading system, something similar to what some countries already use, but it was everywhere. In the United States, a social credit system began to take shape. At first, it was disguised as something helpful, something meant to reward good behavior and safety. But underneath, it was something darker. People were rated not just on their criminal records or driving history, but on their political opinions, religious beliefs, education, even the things they posted online. If your score dropped too low, you couldn't get a loan. You couldn't fly. You couldn't work. It created a world where people were terrified to speak up, where fear kept everyone in line. And yet, in the middle of all that control, something unexpected happened. In 2028, Jesus showed me the return of a man I never followed in life, but recognized instantly in the vision: Donald Trump. Somehow, he was elected president again. I don't even live in the US, and I didn't understand all the politics, but I knew this was big. He tore down what was left of the world banking system and brought back paper currency in America. For a time, there was freedom again, at least in that part of the world. From 2028 to 2063, I saw a kind of peace settle across much of the world. No major wars, no global famines. It was like the world had finally taken a breath. People were rebuilding, reconnecting. But underneath it all, the divide was still growing. By 2061, the tension in the US became too much. The country split in two. Not through a war, but through sheer difference. Two new nations were born: the United Northern States and the United Southern States of America. It was quiet for a while, but in 2063, everything shifted again. I saw the red flags rising. I saw ships, soldiers, planes. China invaded both new nations. And it wasn't just an attack, it was a full-scale takeover. The only way to survive was for the two American nations to join forces with Canada and Mexico, creating a new alliance called the United States of North America. And even then, it wasn't enough to stop the war. What followed was 7 years of global conflict, darker than anything I've ever seen or could describe. That war, it wasn't just about land or power. It was about survival. The world turned into something unrecognizable, cities reduced to ash, families torn apart, technology twisted into tools of destruction. I saw weapons I don't even have words for. It wasn't like the wars in our history books. This one felt final. People everywhere were desperate for food, for shelter, for hope. And yet, even in all that chaos, Jesus made it clear, this was not the end of the world. It was a breaking point, yes, but also the beginning of something new. After the war ended in 2070, I saw leaders from around the globe gather and make a vow: no more war. Not ever again. They signed a declaration that would hold, at least until the end of the 70 years I was shown. People began to rebuild again, this time more carefully. There was a new awareness, a deeper understanding of how fragile peace is and how easily it can be lost. Technology became more compassionate, built to serve, not control. Faith started to rise again. People began to remember God. As my vision of the future faded, Jesus looked at me one more time and said, "This is why you must return." I didn't want to. My children were gone. My heart had been shattered. I had nothing left to go back to. But he hugged me tight, like a father holding his child, and whispered, "I will be with you. Every step, every breath. You will not walk alone." And with that, I was pulled back. Through the tunnel, through the darkness, back into my broken body. I woke up in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines. My chest burned. My head ached. But I was alive. A nurse told me I'd been shot 6 times. A neighbor had found me and performed CPR until the ambulance came. The doctors called it a miracle. I tried to tell one of them what I saw, about Jesus, about the future, and just like before, I was labeled unstable. I was sent for a psychiatric evaluation. They said I'd cracked from grief. But I know what I saw. I know who I met. And nothing can ever take that from me. I was eventually released, but nothing in my life was the same. I had lost my children, the only family I had. I was healing from physical wounds that would leave scars forever, but it was the spiritual and emotional pain that weighed heaviest. I didn't know how to live in a world that felt so empty, so far removed from what I had seen in heaven. But slowly, little by little, I began to move forward. I met someone new in 2013, a kind man named Derek, who didn't try to fix me, but simply sat with me in the dark when I needed it. We eventually married, and in time, we had a son together. A beautiful baby boy. Jesus had shown me this moment during my time in the light. I remembered seeing our child's face before he was even born. I remembered seeing Derek's death too, something I haven't had the strength to tell him about yet. I know the year. I know the month. And every time I look at him, I wonder if I'll be able to tell him before it's too late. It's a heavy thing to carry, knowing the future. Not just the good, but also the heartbreak. The endings. I try not to let it consume me, but some days it does. I know there are people out there who will hear this and scoff, who will roll their eyes and call me a liar or delusional or worse. That's okay. You don't have to believe me. But when you see what happens in 2024, when you see the banks start to collapse, when paper money disappears and crypto becomes law, when your freedoms start to feel like a distant memory, I hope you'll remember this story. I hope you'll remember that a woman who lost everything was shown what's coming, not to scare you, but to prepare you. If you've made it this far, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. If this story touched something in you, if it stirred your spirit or gave you something to think about, please like this video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe for more real experiences like this one. What's coming isn't something we can avoid, but it is something we can face together with God. Stay strong, stay faithful, and always remember, this world is not our home. It's just a step on the way back to Him.